Hi, dear friends, and welcome back to Timeless Wisdom. Have you ever taken a quiet moment to look around your home and suddenly noticed just how silent it's become? Not the soothing kind of quiet, but a hollow stillness that carries the weight of memories. The laughter that once bounced off these walls, the sound of footsteps running down the hallway, the voices calling out, "Mom" or "Dad." Now, those joyful noises are replaced by the steady ticking of a clock and the faint hum of appliances. Sometimes that silence doesn't simply fill the room. It settles deep within you and presses on your chest. Maybe you've caught yourself sitting in your favorite chair, a cup of tea warming your hands, and wondered when your phone last rang. Not a call from a friend or neighbor, but from the very people you once raised. The children whose scraped knees you kissed, whose wildest dreams you supported. These days, it can feel as though they've drifted into their own orbits, caught up in lives you're no longer part of. There's been no argument, no dramatic falling out, just a slow and gentle distance, an absence that leaves you questioning, did I do something wrong? If that thought has ever crossed your mind, I want you to hear this from the bottom of my heart. You did not fail, and you are not forgotten. What you're feeling is not rejection. It's something deeper, and you are far from alone in experiencing it. One of the greatest inner struggles we all carry is the simple longing to be loved and the quiet fear of being left behind. When we're younger, we keep that fear at bay with the busyness of work, raising a family, and all the responsibilities life throws at us. But as time passes and the world grows quieter, those old fears can slowly rise back to the surface. They slip in during long afternoons, on birthdays when no one calls, or on holidays that pass with only a few polite messages. The real pain isn't just about feeling lonely. It's about the emotional distance, the sense of being gently exiled from the people who once made up the center of your world. It's like a door closing slowly, softly, and one day you find yourself standing on the other side, unsure of exactly how it happened. But before we go any further, I want to reassure you, you are not broken. This is not the end of your story, not by a long shot. In fact, this moment of silence, as hard as it can be, might be the very beginning of something unexpected. Because hidden within this pain is a seed of transformation. It's what some call sublimation, the incredible power to take your deepest wounds and slowly, gently, turn them into something beautiful, meaningful, and strong. Think of how much you've given, your time, your love, your strength, all the bedtime stories, the meals made with tired hands, the sacrifices that no one ever saw. And now, in return, you're met with postponed visits, quick conversations, or sometimes nothing at all. It hurts. Of course it does. You formed a bond that ran so deep, your very identity became tied to your children's presence. But here's the turning point. You are more than that role. You were someone before you were a parent, and you are still someone now. There's a quiet wisdom inside you that's been gathering all these years. And maybe, just maybe, this chapter of your life is asking you to rediscover it. Let's pause for a moment and consider this. What if their distance isn't about you at all? What if it's about the world they're caught up in, the pressures they're navigating, the roles they're still trying to figure out? Sometimes we unknowingly project our own fears onto others, so when they don't call, we think they don't love me anymore. But the truth might be that they're lost in their own chaos, unaware of the shadow they've cast on your heart. This doesn't excuse the pain, but it does offer a different lens, one where their absence doesn't define your worth. One where you stop waiting for someone else to affirm that you matter and start reminding yourself of all the ways you already do. That's easier said than done, I know, but this moment, this very season of life, can be your turning point. It's the moment when you stop living as a background character in someone else's story and begin writing your own, fully and unapologetically. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to wish things were different, but let that ache be your teacher, not your jailer. Instead of sitting in the silence, waiting, try listening to what your heart has been whispering all these years. The artist who put down her brushes to change diapers, the singer who stopped humming because someone else needed sleep, the thinker who never finished the book because the dishes were piling up. Those parts of you never vanished. They've just been patiently waiting for your return. You are still becoming. That might sound surprising at your age, but it's true. The human soul never stops growing unless we tell it to. And if you've been telling yourself it's too late, I want you to look me in the eye and hear this. It is not too late. You haven't missed your chance. You haven't faded. You've just paused. And now you have the choice to press play again. Start small. Dig your hands into the garden, pick up that pen, call an old friend. Not because you need to be needed, but because you still have love to share. The human spirit longs for expression, so give yourself that gift, not to prove something to your children, but to rediscover the joy of simply being you. You see, when we pour everything into others, we sometimes forget that we were always more than just the support beam. We are the foundation, the whole structure, and we deserve to stand tall, even when no one else is leaning on us anymore. Let me tell you something else. There's dignity in choosing yourself again, not in a selfish way, but in a sacred, life-affirming way. It's saying, I am still here, I still matter, I still have dreams and thoughts and beauty to offer. Because you do. When your children were young, you were their centre, and now they've spun outward. As they must. That's the way of life. But just because they're not orbiting around you doesn't mean you've stopped shining. You're still the sun. You just have to remember it. And I promise you, when you begin to live fully for yourself, something magical happens. That invisible weight starts to lift. That ache becomes softer, and sometimes, just sometimes, the ones who drifted away begin to feel your presence in a new way. Not because you begged for their attention, but because your light quietly reminded them of who you are. So if the phone doesn't ring today, take a deep breath. If the door stays closed, light a candle anyway, not in sadness, but in honour for all that you've been, for all that you still are. You are not forgotten. You are not done. You are a story still unfolding. There's something strange about growing older. As the noise of life softens, your emotions start to speak louder. You begin to feel things more deeply, more slowly, and more honestly. The same hands that once held your children's faces now tremble slightly when pouring tea. The body changes, but the heart, it remembers everything. It remembers the birthdays you stayed up late to prepare for, the worried nights when they were sick, the little victories you cheered for more than your own. And so, when those very children forget to call or send only a short message on a holiday, it's not just a missed interaction. It stirs something deeper, something like a psychic echo, the resurgence of an old wound. Not a new one, but a past pain rising in a new form. That's why it feels so intense, because it's not just about today. It brings up the friend who stopped writing, the parent who never hugged you enough, the times you smiled even when you felt invisible. You see, pain doesn't vanish. It settles. It waits. And in the stillness of later life, it rises to be heard. So what do you do when the people you once gave everything to disappear into the business of their own lives? You do what we all must learn to do. You turn inward, not to close off, but to examine, not to punish yourself, but to ask the questions you never had time to answer. Who am I now? Who am I without their constant need for me? And maybe most importantly, who am I beyond the role I played for so long? These are not questions of despair. They are invitations. Invitations to meet yourself again, and not the version defined by diaper changes and parent-teacher meetings, but the version who still dreams, who still longs, who still matters. There is an idea called individuation, a stage where the self becomes whole, not through others, but through truth. It means you no longer define your worth by your reflection in someone else's eyes. Instead, you begin to see your value as something that exists on its own, quiet, steady, unshakable. This is not detachment in the cold sense, it's warmth turned inward, a gentle return to the self, a remembering that your story never ended. It just shifted chapters. And I know what you might be thinking, but I miss them. Yes, of course you do. Love doesn't disappear just because presence does. But here's the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself now. Let your love continue without conditions, without expectations, without the pain of needing it returned in the exact way you gave it. That doesn't mean you stop hoping. It means you stop hurting because your hope hasn't been fulfilled. Much of our suffering comes from the confusion between emotional truth and factual truth. Emotionally, you might feel abandoned. Factually, your children may just be overwhelmed, distracted, or even unaware of how you feel. They may not even realize the weight of their absence. So what if, instead of seeing that absence as rejection, you saw it as redirection? A redirection toward the parts of you that have been patiently waiting for your attention. The painter, the gardener, the letter writer, the friend, the thinker, the soul. You are not defined by who shows up. You are revealed by how you show up for yourself. And here's something else to consider. When we live for others too long, we sometimes forget how to live for ourselves. So when they pull away, even gently, it leaves a strange silence, one we don't know how to fill at first. But silence is not a punishment. It is a blank page. You don't have to fill it with noise or distractions. You can fill it with presence, with awareness, with choices that bring you back to life. Pick up the book you never finished. Write that story. Plant those flowers. Learn to cook something new. Reach out to someone who might be feeling the same way you do. Because chances are there's someone else out there right now waiting for a knock at their door too. This part of your life is not about fading quietly. It's about blooming, fiercely and fully, into everything you still are. You've already survived so much. You've held others when they cried. You've stayed strong when it mattered. And now it's time to do the same for yourself. Hold yourself with kindness. Speak to yourself with the same compassion you once gave so freely to your children, and remind yourself every single day that your worth was never based on who called or visited. It was based on your soul, the one that kept loving, hoping, dreaming, even in silence. There's a kind of power in this season of life, the power to release what you can't control, the power to reclaim what you once gave away, the power to stand in the mirror and say, I am still here and I am still becoming. True maturity isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. Not why did they forget me, but what have I forgotten about myself? Because the truth is, the child inside you, the joyful, playful, curious part, is still in there waiting. Maybe a little dusty, a little quiet, but still full of life. And it's not too late, not by a long shot. So if the day feels long, if the silence feels heavy, do something small just for you. Make a cup of tea and sit in the sun. Write one page in a journal. Call someone who makes you laugh. Take a walk without needing a destination. Let those moments be proof, not to anyone else, but to yourself, that you are living, that you are healing, that you are enough because you are. It's a strange thing, isn't it, to reach a point in life where you no longer need to impress anyone. The world moves fast around you, but something inside has begun to slow down. And in that stillness, you start hearing things you never heard before. Your own thoughts, your own longings, your own voice. That voice has always been there, whispering beneath the roles you've played, beneath the parent, the provider, the caregiver. In these later years, we often revisit the core of who we are, not because we're regressing, but because we're returning home to the self we left behind. And that return is powerful, because once you realize you no longer need someone else's approval to feel whole, you begin to live in a new kind of freedom. The phone might still be quiet. The birthdays may still pass without a knock on the door. But instead of that silence hurting you, it begins to teach you. It teaches you to fill your own cup, to rediscover your own rhythm, to find joy in places that were once ignored. You stop asking, "Why haven't they called?" and begin asking, "What do I want to do today, just for me?" There's something deeply beautiful about an older soul who starts to live again, not out of obligation, not for anyone else, but out of pure self-love. It's not selfishness, it's healing. It's a form of sublimation, the transformation of emotional pain into creative energy, into growth, into something life-affirming. You begin to see that you don't have to wait to be remembered. You can choose, in every breath, to remember yourself. And the funny thing is, when you stop needing to be noticed, people begin to notice. Not because you demanded it, but because you began to radiate something, quiet and steady dignity. A presence that comes from peace, not performance. That's not to say the ache disappears. No, there will be moments, sudden ones when grief sneaks in, a photo, a scent, a song on the radio, and that ache will remind you of what once was, of the arms you held, the tiny shoes you tied, the nights you stayed awake worrying about someone who now barely has time to ask how you are. When those moments come, don't push them away. Repressing pain only gives it more power. Instead, sit with it. Let it pass through. Say, "Yes, this hurts, and yes, I am still here." Because in that honesty, you become your own healer. Not the version who hides the pain, but the one who holds it gently, like an old photograph. A reminder of a love that was real, a life that was full. And then you breathe, you rise, you move, not away from the pain, but with it. You let it become part of the tapestry of who you are, not the whole story, but a thread woven through. That's the quiet revolution of aging. It's not about forgetting the past, it's about no longer being trapped in it. It's about standing in the truth of your present life and realizing that it still holds beauty, still holds possibility, still holds you. And here's something no one tells you often enough. You are still deeply needed in this world, not necessarily by those who once cried in your arms, but by the world itself, by the friend who admires your wisdom, by the neighbor who finds comfort in your presence, by the stranger who might read your words or hear your voice and feel a little less alone, and yes, most importantly, by you. Because your life isn't over, it is still unfolding, still blooming, still yours. So write that poem, learn that new recipe, try something that scares you a little, not because you have to prove anything, but because your soul still craves movement, growth, surprise. You see, the greatest joy doesn't always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives in the warmth of the morning sun, the softness of your favorite blanket, the laughter that escapes unexpectedly when a memory catches you just right. These are the small miracles of a life lived fully. True freedom comes not when we escape our past, but when we stop being ruled by it, when we stop outsourcing our joy to others, when we stop saying, "I'll be okay when," and start saying, "I am okay now." And you are, even if they don't visit, even if they forget your birthday, even if they've stopped asking how you really feel, because your story didn't end when their visits did. It shifted, and now you get to choose how this chapter is written. Let it be a chapter of discovery, of laughter, of truth. Let it be a return, not to what was, but to what's possible. There's a temptation, especially when you've given so much, to slip into the role of the martyr, to tell yourself the story of all you sacrificed, all you gave, and how little was returned. And yes, those stories may be true, but holding on to them can become a prison, one where you're always waiting to be saved. But here's the most important thing I can tell you. You don't need saving. You need remembering. You need to remember that even now, especially now, you have the power to step out of that story and into a new one where you are not the forgotten character, but the bold, beautiful author. So speak your truth, not with bitterness, but with strength. Create your joy, not from obligation, but from desire. And live, not because someone is watching, but because your soul still sings. You have spent a lifetime building others. Now it's time to build yourself. Start where you are, with what you have, with the one person who has been with you through it all, yourself. There comes a moment, quietly and without fanfare, when you stop looking out the window and start looking in the mirror, not to check for new lines on your face, but to meet someone you've forgotten, yourself. The years you spent pouring into others were not wasted. They built lives, they built memories. But now, in this space of quiet, you have the rarest of gifts, time, not to give away, but to finally keep. And the question becomes, what will you do with it? Every symptom, every ache of the soul is a message, not a curse, not a failure, but a signal. And the silence you feel now, it's saying something. It's not just pointing to what you miss, it's pointing to what you've neglected, not from selfishness, but from love. You gave everything you had. Now it's your turn to receive from yourself. Because here's what no one tells you in the parenting books. At some point, the job changes, the role shifts. And if you don't shift with it, you risk disappearing into a shadow of who you once were. But the truth is, you were never meant to stay just one thing. You were always meant to evolve, to expand, to surprise even yourself. This chapter is not lesser than the ones before. It is deeper, quieter, but no less meaningful. It's the chapter where you don't have to carry everyone anymore, just yourself. And you get to choose what you carry now. A brush instead of burdens, laughter instead of longing, new memories instead of mourning the old ones. Let yourself be someone new. Let yourself say, I am not waiting for them to remember me. I am remembering me. Because when you do that, something shifts. You move from being defined by the absence of others to being shaped by the presence of your own soul. You realize your identity is not fragile, it's not dependent. It's resilient, it's radiant, it's ready. And yes, there will still be days when it hurts, when you think of them and feel a wave of sadness. That's okay. That's human. But let those moments pass like clouds. Don't let them block the sun of who you are becoming. You've heard people say, you can't pour from an empty cup. But what they don't say is that sometimes after years of pouring, the cup isn't just empty, it's cracked, and it leaks even when you try to refill it. That's what happens when you've spent a lifetime giving, but never stopped to heal. So now, repair the cup with care, with compassion, with joy. And then fill it, not for anyone else, but for you. Fill it with your stories, with music, with walks at sunrise, with the kind of laughter that catches you off guard, with books, with friends you haven't met yet, with solitude that feels sacred, not sad. And if one day your children call, if they show up with apologies or affection, or simply curiosity, receive them with grace. But don't let their presence become your center again, because you've already found your own. You don't need to prove you matter anymore. You do. And maybe, just maybe, they will sense the difference, the steadiness in your voice, the light in your eyes, not the desperate reach of someone begging to be seen, but the calm glow of someone who sees themselves. This is called psychic maturity, the moment when the soul no longer clings but chooses, when love becomes offering, not obligation, when peace becomes internal, not conditional, and when your story, your precious, evolving story, is no longer written in the margins of someone else's life. You are not a footnote, You're a headline, not a memory, a presence, not a fading figure in the background, but a bold brushstroke on the canvas of time. And so, from all of us here at Timeless Wisdom, I invite you to do one small thing just for yourself today. Bake something you love, step outside for a walk with no destination in mind, jot down your thoughts in a journal for 10 minutes, or simply sit and breathe in the stillness, not as someone who's at the mercy of silence, but as its master. You have truly earned this peace. You have earned the freedom and the joy that comes with it. If anyone ever asks, "What are you doing with your life now?" look them in the eye and say with pride, "I'm living it, deeply, fully, and freely." You don't have to wait by the phone anymore because you're answering a far greater call, the call to remember who you really are, to reclaim what's been buried inside, and to rise up again. You are not invisible, you're simply starting a beautiful new chapter. In every sense of the word, you are home. If this message touched your heart, even in the smallest way, please consider sharing it with someone who might be feeling alone right now, someone who may believe they've been forgotten. Remind them, as you've reminded yourself, that no one is ever truly alone, that love always begins from within, and that there is always space for joy. The soul never retires, it only reawakens. And you, dear friend, are living proof of that. Here's to the version of you that finally decided, "I deserve to shine." Here's to living your very best life, on your terms, in your own time, and with all your heart. And here's to the quiet revolution you've just begun, right here with us at Timeless Wisdom.